Well, Republican Congressman Bill Johnson of Ohio is a co-sponsor of the Stock Act, and Democratic Congressman Tim Walz of Minnesota is a leading sponsor of the Stock Act. And before we go to the Stock Act, gentlemen, I want to first talk a little bit about these races that are happening this evening. So let's start with you, Congressman Walz. Look for me at the race in Minnesota. What are your expectations for tonight?
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to speak for Republican caucus goers, but what I can tell you in Minnesota, there's a pretty high premium put on conviction and authenticity, and I think probably Governor Romney not even being in the state the last couple of days is pretty telling. And my guess is probably the way this thing looks like it's going to shake out, 33% will win this thing, and I would guess maybe Senator Santorum will probably win it there, and just pretty much in flux.
I love the way you started saying, I'm not going to talk about Republican caucus goers, but here's what I think.
Speak with any can only
I
say
hear you.
I think that's what's happening.
Congressman Johnson, Santorum is predicted to potentially be surging. We know that Romney has been on the attack, or Romney's folks have been on the attack. What do you think that means for the race?
Well, I can't say what Mr. Santorum or the other candidates are doing tactically, but I know strategically they're all focused on the same thing, and that's to make this President Obama a one-term president. You know, his policies have hurt America. We've had 36 straight months of unemployment in excess of 8%. Most of the time, it's been around 9% or higher. We've got 2 million more Americans out of work today than when he came into office, and we've got 4 million more Americans that are classified as either low income or at the poverty line. And every economic indicator we've got practically is heading in the wrong direction. So I'm sure that that's what Governor Romney and Mr. Santorum and Newt Gingrich are all focused on.
All that said, Ohio's a battleground state, and it's a state that President Obama won by 5 points in 2008. And if you look at this new poll that comes out of ABC, it shows a swing of independent voters. The number to look at is the first column. You know, 48% independents supporting President Obama was 38% back in January. That's a 10-point leap. If you look at Mitt Romney's numbers, was 50%. Now that's dropped just a few points to 47%. Does a graph like that concern you, sir?
Well, what I can tell you that along the eastern and southeastern Ohio border, along the Ohio River, where unemployment is still unacceptably high, people there are concerned about jobs. They're concerned about unemployment. CBO reports that unemployment will be back up around 9% by the end of this year. So we are far from woods, and we've got a long way to go between now and November. And I can tell you that people in my district that are paying double for what they paid for a gallon of gasoline when President Obama came into office, they're concerned, and I think that'll be reflected in November.
Congressman Walz, let's talk about the Stock Act. It basically says you can't insider trade, and members of Congress would be subjected to the same rules that regular folks would be subjected to. When
Imagine that big reach.
Shocking. I'm shocked.
Yeah, shocking.
as a voter. Why do you think this bill, in all seriousness, why do you think it's important?
Well, I've been on this since I got here, Soledad, and it's about restoring faith in government, in the democracy. And Bill and I will disagree greatly, and we can talk about the president and the difference indicators and the job growth and things like that. But fundamentally, I know Bill's an honest guy doing the right thing, and I think the American public, once again, need to see their government that same way. And that proposition of playing by the rules is absolutely fundamental to the way we do things in America. So I think you get something like this passed, then we can start dealing with the real issues about how we move and how we make sure this Congress passes some things to help that growth moving in the right direction. So it's really about restoring faith.
Congressman Johnson, how would this change how Congress does business on this front, specifically, literally?
Absolutely. I want to echo what Tim said. There's no doubt about it. Tim and I probably have differences where the presidential climate is concerned, but there are some things that Tim and I agree strongly on, and this is one of those areas. And returning integrity and honesty and the faith of the American people to their elected representatives, this is extremely important. And I'm very, very proud to be a co-sponsor of the Stock Act, and I plan to support it this week. It's only fair that and only right that we expect our elected representatives and their staff in Washington to abide by the same rules that the American people have to.
and might get those congressional approval numbers up from %, which are kind of bad. Gentlemen, I thank you for joining us this morning.